right, here we go. I'd like to make a few introductions though. Hello, Shant.
Hi, Edwin. Good morning, Julia.
Good morning.
I don't know if you can see me,
Shant.
but apparently I can see you though. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you.
Oh no, I can see you I can see you on the screen now.
Oh, great.
Right.
So I was just thinking in this virtual period, the only way you can say hello is to say hi, nice to see you, but you can't even say nice to meet you because it's all virtual and a little different now, isn't it?
Oh, it sure is. It's a really interesting world. I don't know how you guys are tracking. We're only just have the Omicron virus, which has just turned up in the last couple of weeks. So we're really behind in terms of managing COVID. It's only just turned up. We still have got all our borders closed. New Zealanders that are offshore can't come home. It's just absolute. It's chaos.
Right.
Even though 90% of our country is vaccinated, it's crazy. Yeah, and we're so far away from everybody and such low risk, and we've had a really, really low mortality rate. But yeah, it's very interesting. We're not back in lockdown at the moment, but our government has put on a really high alert for us at the moment. So yeah, people are back working at home again, and yeah, it's ever changing. So we're just trying to adapt, I guess, and do a lot of this.
Yeah. Right.
We've been following New Zealand in the news very much, and I know somebody like Yogesh Deshpande. Can you see Yogesh Deshpande on your screen?
Yes, I can.
He's our head of operations, and he's a very sticky guy. And he's been to all parts of the world except Australia and New Zealand. Is that right, Yogesh?
Yeah. So good evening, Julia. Really looking forward to hear your experiences.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Oh, my pleasure. Hopefully you get something out of it.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, let's go for it. Officially, we're on. In this TechE edition, we have a young gun, at least according to Insurance Business Magazine, which wrote of people in insurance making a splash and disrupting the space in 2021. Well, this young gun has been disrupting insurance way beyond and before 2021, particularly in New Zealand. And well, she does look a young gun, but she's also a tough gun, and she's also handled guns because she's a police officer. At least she was. But it's interesting that she quit a career in the police force and chose to enter insurance. And I'm going to quiz you as to why. But formally, here is Julia Vahry. Julia Vahry is founder, director of Vahry Insurance. Vahry Insurance is based in Hamilton in New Zealand, and we're thrilled to have you on board this TechE series. Julia, welcome.
Oh, thank you. What a lovely introduction.
From halfway across the globe, almost.
Yeah.
What would you like to tell us about India?
Well, sorry, it totally cut out then. What did you say?
What would you like to tell all of us here in India, all the way from New Zealand? What's your message?
Oh, gosh, hang in there. At the moment, I mean, I think globally, we are all experiencing, I guess, a bit of COVID fatigue and wanting to return to some sort of normality, I guess, and it's affecting everybody personally and in their family lives, and those that have had massive disruptions, I guess, for business as well, and constantly having to adapt and change how we operate. Again, like not only in business but personally with our lives as well. We've had our children home for nearly 2 years now here in New Zealand. So working around being full-time business owner and trying to do things here in New Zealand, but also being a full-time mother as well, it's been a real challenge. So I think telling you guys, hats off to everybody, especially you guys over there. It's been a really challenging 2 years, and I'm just glad that we can all, I'm hoping that this now, we've got a light at the end of the tunnel, we can resume back to some sort of normality and get back to normal. Yeah.
Hats off from Julia to all the working mothers, not just in India, but across the world. And sending it back to you as well, you Miss Working Mother. Now, what got you into insurance, Julia? That's the question of the day.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, to be fair, I never ever saw myself in this industry. It hadn't ever entered into my brain at all. So really what happened, I had been a long-term career police officer here in New Zealand for 10 years. And I had the self-belief that I was going to be a police officer forever. It was my career of choice. I loved it because here in New Zealand, you've got lots of opportunities to go in different areas of the police. So really the world is your oyster, and what department you want to work in and how specialized you want to become. And I was approaching the 10-year mark. I had 2 children under 2 at that stage, and I was working full-time shift work. And a lot of those days were, sometimes 15 hours more. And my children were in daycare full-time, and I was feeling a bit horrible about that I would get home from work and be absolutely bone tired and not interacting with my children. I was at the next step in my career where the police were really wanting me to progress and upskill and keep continuing going up the ranks. And with that, obviously, your responsibility goes up. And I just didn't have at that time, any flexibility in my own personal life. And a friend of mine that I was policing with, he was mortgage broking on the side as well. So he was also policing. And he suggested that my skill set would be really, really great in the insurance world with life insurance. And my first response initially was, forget it. There's absolutely no way I would go into that industry. I don't know how it's perceived in, it's probably fairly represented the same globally, but I suppose in New Zealand, the market for life and health insurance and things like that here, the attitude, which we'll get into later on, the attitude for it is there's very little appetite for it, and how it's perceived within the community is not great. But people often perceive it probably as something that you never get to utilize, and insurance companies are always trying to weasel their way out of things. And there was a real lack of trust, I believe, between the insurers and the consumers. So I just thought, oh, yuck, I don't want to go into that industry. And he kind of worked on me for around 6 months, I would say, till I finally caved in and I said, okay, well, I'll go to an insurance event and see what all the fuss is about. And when I went there, the other insurance brokers and people that were in the industry, I guess the room and the demographic representing that industry was very male, and very much I was probably the youngest by maybe 20 years. So my demographic was very poorly represented, I would describe it as. So having a further understanding of what it was about, and actually, from the outset, my views on the insurance world was very skewed based on my own perception rather than an educated understanding. And the more I grew to understand what they stood for and what you could do with insurance and the power of it, that grew the passion, and it made me really excited about what the opportunities and potential possibilities that you could create within the insurance world in terms of breaking into generational wealth cycles and creating opportunities for people. an amazing opportunity to leave a incredible legacy and stamp behind for those that are important to you in the world. So in a way, the crossover from policing to life insurance was fairly similar in a strange way, but it was. So the work that I was doing in the community with the police, it was very band-aid work. So we would respond to an event, do the best that we could while we were there, and then we would leave, and then we would be on to the next one. So I could never really form relationships with those that were suffering tragedies or had lost a loved one in a car accident or something like that. So I think that was really appealing for me, that I thought, hey, I've got an opportunity to do something really different, position insurance and make it a little bit more on trend and appealing to my demographic, and change the way that it's perceived and done here in New Zealand, because it has just been done the same old way for years and years and years. And something needed to be done. It needed to be changed, and it was just the opportunity, really.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you have an insurance before you got into the insurance industry?
No, I didn't. I had health insurance. So here in New Zealand, we've got a good public health system. It's really good for acute events. So if I was to drop on the floor and have a heart attack, an ambulance would come in, pick me up and take me to our local hospital, and I'd be taken care of, no worries. But where we fall over here in New Zealand is the slow diagnostic testing of an illness, a non-acute event. So if I went to the doctor with stomach pain, and I was then referred on to have other testing done, like an ultrasound or an MRI, or to see a gastroenterologist, we've got huge backlogs. So to see one in the public health system, I mean, we're talking now with COVID, maybe a good couple of years, depending on the severity. And by the time you get to the hospital, they'll be like, sorry, you've got this, it's all over for you. So it's not great in that perspective.
Did you actually go out into the field in your early years and sell an insurance policy?
I did. And I think that's where policing was really beneficial for me. So I was so used to going into knocking on doors and having conversations with people in high conflict. So when I went to knock on the door and cold call to sell an insurance policy, it wasn't a scary process for me. I mean, the worst thing that could happen was them to say, no, thanks, I'm not interested. Rather than them saying, I'll kill you.
How have you been able to change that in the last few years, especially in the last 2 years? Have you used technology to reach out and educate people about the importance of insurance, or have you gotten them? Because I see your website has some interesting links. It says, just call us and we take it from there. You just have to get on a video call, and your policy is issued in minutes. How do you do that?
Well, in business, it's a journey, right? So you learn the first 2 stages was learning the trade and understanding how everything worked. And from the very get-go, I needed to build up a reputation and brand visibility. So it was and awareness. So at first, I had zero client base. Nobody knew who the heck I was. So I needed to build up a significant client base. And really, the only way that I could do that was building a reputation locally. And a lot of that was done through the cold calling initially. And then you would get your reputation. You would start picking up referrals. But that still wasn't enough. And the next step was then implementing the next tech. And so obviously I had huge upgrades in terms of my website and brand during COVID, because it was everything kind of took a dive and nobody wanted to do anything, which was a really scary time for a lot of businesses here. So I invested heavily into upgrading my website and finding other alternative ways that people could get in contact with me. So streamlining the process, making it really appealing digitally for people to want to reach out. And And then I upgraded and changed all my CRM systems to make the process as easy and streamlined as possible. So it's really important as you progress in business to make sure that you're partnering with other companies that will supplement your business proposition and strategy perfectly. And it's so incredible how quickly times are changing, and in terms of the importance of data as well. So I'm really excited long term with the bigger that the business gets, the more information that I have, the more availability I have to that data to create better results within my business. And yeah, just mining that data and information really to have, to keep improving things for people.
Right. You seem to.
I have a question.
Yes, sure.
I have a question, Julia. How did you manage the money logistics for this? Because obviously you invested a lot of money, and you also had to keep your people who work with you on a payroll, right? How did you manage?
So scarily with me being stepping into that entrepreneurial role, when I left the police to kick the business off, I didn't resign completely. So what I did was I took 3 months leave without pay. So you could do, that was allowed in my contract. So I decided to make a calculated risk. I was quite nervous leaving a government paid job, which was very consistent with income. My parents were terrified when I told them what I was going to do. They were like, what? You're going to leave the police after 10 years and go out and start your own insurance business? You're nuts. Don't do it. Stay with the police. It's guaranteed income. Be safe. But I had this self-belief that I would be successful. So I kept my contract with the police, and then I went out cold calling relentlessly for 3 months. And I had an agreement with myself that if I made my entire year's salary with the police within 3 months, that I would resign. And so I did that. And so from there, I haven't taken out any loans or anything like that. I've bootstrapped, so self-funded everything from the very get-go. And I did that because I was really nervous, and perhaps probably the way that I was raised is that my parents were very conservative with money. So I've never owned a credit card or anything like that. So this learning experience in business for me was quite scary. And when I did take a portion of my savings that I had within the business and heavily invested into redeveloping brand and my website and CRM systems and technology, that was probably the most terrifying experience of my life. Placing all that time and effort on myself and placing the bets that I would be successful if I did this. So in terms of funding, I've done everything from ground zero with no bank loans or funding. And I've had a lot of interest with people wanting to be involved in terms of investment, which I've turned down because I haven't wanted to lose control in any way in terms of what I can and can't do in the business. Just a personality trait, I think.
It's amazing. It's wonderful that you have such confidence in yourself. See, an entrepreneur needs to have that. Got to take a risk, you see. And you've taken the risk and you're hanging on and doing a good job of it. Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm sure Yogesh has a technology question on the tip of his tongue.
No, I don't have. I have another question. Actually, your website is really nice. I mean, it is very contemporary. So I was going through it, and somewhere you have said that productivity and engagement within the business increases when people aren't stressed about money, their future, and the future of their children. My thought was this is true for developing countries, and it is not true for a developed country like New Zealand, Australia, where economies are, I mean, the per capita income are more, etc. This should not be worry for them. So could you please share something on that?
Yeah, I guess culturally, probably being in that, a Western country, is that the way, and I'll base this off personal experience. So my experience in the police was really incredible for me because it gave me the most wonderful perspective of how people live and the other side of society. So New Zealand is extremely privileged, right? So the poorest Kiwis and New Zealanders here are still in the wealthiest 5% in the world. And so the perspective of this, like, it's really hard for us here in New Zealand, it's actually not. So the government looks after us perfectly well. There's no homelessness. People are still, regardless of if you work or not, or if you're unable to work due to mental illness or disability, you're still going to be looked after by the government, have food, have money, and have a house over your head, a roof over your head. So I think culturally the views that people here have are, they don't have the perspective of how globally other people live. And I was really fortunate that with my time in the police, I was able to see the other side of how, I guess, those that are less fortunate here in New Zealand, how they do live. And that gave me great perspective of, to not take things so much for granted. Whereas typically, I guess, in New Zealand and Australia and out those first world countries, perhaps we're not as resilient. I just don't think culturally we have the same amount of resilience because a lot of them haven't really had it that hard before. Does this make sense?
Yeah, it does.
It does make sense.
Yeah, when I try and explain productivity and engagement, here in New Zealand, the culture is usually if they're worried about finances or illness or things that are going on at home, statistically, people underperform at work because they're worried about things that are going on at home. So if we're able to fix that from an insurance point of view and bring in the security that, hey, if anything does go wrong, you're okay financially. I guess removing that anxiety in the background for them is a huge help to help improve productivity and engagement. That's what I'm, to bring us round into the circle of answering your question. It's really hard because culturally it's so different. The views of a first world country are so significantly different to how the rest of the world live. So many people just don't have that understanding or can't even gauge the reality of it, really.
We have a few.
One small technology question though. What technologies you think will help you to expand outside your geography? I mean, you are in city of Hamilton, I guess. I'm not aware about New Zealand, but if you want to expand your operations to New Zealand or to Australia, what kind of technologies will help you?
It's a really tricky question to answer because in terms of insurance, we're regulated and our laws here are delegated around, like I'm in the position here in terms of insurance in the business, the market space that I can currently only work in is in New Zealand. I don't have the capability to go out, say, for example, into Australia or anywhere else in the world because the legislation of how we operate is only within the realms of New Zealand. So it's really I would love to be able to do that. It's just New Zealand is the only market at the moment that I can work within. And in terms of technology, here, having a really, really polished CRM system is really key for processing and making it quick and easy. I've just engaged actually with somebody to help me with strategy with SEO and Google marketing and things like that to kick that off and help me because anything tech related for me is, to be quite honest, is my weakest point in my business. So I have to farm that off to somebody else. I mean, if my computer turns off, I'm like, oh no, that's it. I don't know. Help somebody. It's just I identifying what you're good at and what you're not so great in business. And my biggest, unfortunately for me, is actually technology. Funny enough.
I know, Julia, I know why Yogesh asked you that question. because he's got a lot of technology stuffed in his pockets right now. We've been a techie company for the last 20 years, and I'm going to introduce you to Vivek, the founder chairman of AccelTree. He's the one who sort of created this point of sale solution for the insurance industry, and he whipped it out of thin air. And today we have about 70,000 insurance agents across the APAC who are using this POS system very effectively to onboard customers. So I know that Yogesh's question came from that because he's itching to tell you that we are POS leaders. I'd like to introduce Vivek here. Vivek, would you like to say hello to Julia and pose her a question, I'm sure?
Yeah. Hi, Julia. Good to meet you. I have a lot of questions. I have so many questions that I actually wrote them down.
Wonderful. I'm ready.
Okay. They're going to be rapid fire questions because I'm sure Edwin won't let me talk forever. What steps do you take to get people to increase trust in insurance companies? How do you get them to, because there's always a lack of trust.
Oh, always. It's my biggest pet peeve. And I think that with me, putting it all on the table and showing true authenticity through your brand and how you demonstrate your own self and personality socially. So obviously by social media, LinkedIn would be my number one platform in terms of lead generation. When we talk about them identifying who we are as a company and our values, and also as well, demonstrating the commitment to the community as well. So what we're doing as an organization within our own community to help encourage wellness and well-being, and how we can give back and progress and move forward positively together. So we partnered not last year but the year before with the New Zealand Blood Service here, and so our blood service is a government funded agency which help encourage normal New Zealanders to give blood donations. So here in New Zealand, I'm not sure how it operates with you guys, but with blood donations, they're not paid. So you don't get paid for donating blood. It's completely voluntary. So what we did was partnering with, companies and organizations like that to try and get the community to come together and get great outcomes in terms of, if you donate blood here in New Zealand, one donation will save up to 3 lives. So trying to, I guess, paint the picture and show that you are a community orientated organization, and that that kind of helps demonstrate a high trust value that it's a company that's doing the right things. And also as well, I like to be authentic with who I am in social media, and talk about real and raw topics, I guess, to show the human side, because tech, as wonderful as tech is, sometimes you really do need that human touch for people to have a connection with you and want to work with you. Yeah, and also as well, I think we talk about a lot of it's okay as humans to make mistakes, and where we've come from and how we've shaped our journeys. And yeah, it's just making it really clear what our value sets are as being really good innovators, empowering our community, and encouraging others to be their best selves. And I guess all of those great things hopefully are starting to create high trust, which I think we've done really, really well. And yeah, not just a big organization where clients get sucked into and there's no human touch. It's they are genuinely cared about, and also we've created the business to create the right client for us as well that would suit our ethos. So attracting those people into the business. And I think if you demonstrate that who you are and what you are about, you do attract like-minded people to the organization, which is quite nice because then I get to pick and choose who comes in, and if they're not quite the right fit, then we kick them to touch and don't have to work with them. So it's quite nice.
Great. Thank you very much for this answer, because you also answered my second question, which was, how do you increase penetration in the community? That was my second question. So it got answered.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Now, in every buyer's mind, there is a question of, is it worth the cost of paying for insurance to cover the risk? How do you handle that question? Because that's a question which can have different answers.
I get that pretty much with every single client that comes through. And my answer is always very transparent. It's insurance, it's risk. Something may happen to you, something may never happen to you. It's whether or not you're willing to run that gauntlet and take the risk yourself of either protecting something that may or may not happen. And the regret is always there when they don't. So I always like to bring that front of mind, is that humans are exceptionally fragile. We're all going to die, and I always am very upfront with that. It's just a matter of when. We don't know when it's going to happen, who knows how. It's an inevitable thing that will happen, and whether or not they want to protect that element of life, it's totally up to them. And also as well, it's really important to highlight the risks that we face as humans. I always like to have clients make informed decisions and put it in their hands. I give them statistics of what our ratio here is. I think 1 in 3 New Zealanders are diagnosed with cancer now before the age of 60, which is terrible. Cancer is our biggest issue here. I think probably it is globally now. And as well, my policing background has made it very real and raw for me. So sharing those stories of how fragile life is, I'm more than capable of saying, hey, this is what I've experienced, and it's the reality of life. We don't ever want it to happen, but it does. And it's up to you whether or not you want to prepare yourself for that and create prosperity out of adversity.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Hi, Julia. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
I had a question. How important is for your clients? How important is speed for clients? Speed meaning getting an application getting an application filled out and approved as soon as possible. I understand completely the importance of having one-on-one meetings. And this is not only true for New Zealand, I think it's true everywhere, where you have direct-to-customer websites. New Zealand has one. Remember, New Zealand has quite a few, but I think there's no more than 5 or 6% actually buy directly through the internet. They always want to meet someone. Mm-hmm. So given that, and this is true in the US, India, everywhere. So given that, how important is the speed?
For me, it's not. Yeah, it's not about speed. It's about relationships. Yeah. So I never put the pressure on clients to hurry up. I will do my best at that very first interview and engagement to outline the importance that, hey, if we're going to do this, let's get it done in a timely manner rather than faffing around, because there will always be the risk that if we don't, another illness condition might happen or come up, and which could be excluded or something like that. But as a rule, I think if you rush things, the quality we run that risk that the quality of your work diminishes. So getting in an application quickly is not necessarily in somebody's best interest. I mean, for example, I've been working on a client's case with an application for probably 5 months with the same company. And after 5 months of rigmarole with this particular company and me being rather dissatisfied with the service of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, you know, sometimes we might even make that executive decision to be like, these guys aren't for us, and let's look elsewhere. We're not getting the results that we were expecting first time round. Let's keep looking and make sure that what we have is going to create the best outcome for you. And that doesn't necessarily happen all the time. That I've just experienced this in the last couple of months with a couple of insurers where it hasn't been working. So, and a lot of New Zealanders, where it goes wrong is when they do these rush decisions, or they buy quickly in a snap without having a thorough process or information, and then it never works out for them in the end because they've been rushed into a decision. I mean, that's like that goes.
Yeah.
That saying goes with anything, right? You buy something and go, "Oh, I want that," and then realize, "Oh crap, down the road, that was a bad decision. I probably should have thought about this thoroughly." And I think as well, that's where we've gone wrong historically as well, and potentially why the insurance industry has got a bad rep, because people do these quick buy purchases and then go to claim for something and then realize that they were never going to be covered for it, or they just don't get the outcome that they thought they were signing up for. So yeah. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. One more question. I mean, I noticed that you have group insurance as well for so I'm guessing the life and health, well, not health so much, but the life insurance offerings and the group employee benefit plans are not quite as high as individual plans in terms of face value, so you have the opportunity to cross-sell, etc. But I guess the question is, how big is the market for life insurance, individual life versus group?
Well, 2 years, put it this way. So pre-COVID, my whole ethos was group insurance and employment insurance is the way forward for the future, because my experience with personal insurance, so when you see somebody independently and then they have to be financially and medically underwritten personally, just one-on-one based on their medical backgrounds, it was quite a stressful and strenuous process for the client and for me as well, because I can never fully guarantee that something will go ahead. There can be issues where the client's forgotten about an illness and hasn't fully disclosed it. I don't know, wordings could change, the insurer could fold. There are so many like unpredictable factors in there, which from a policing background makes me still quite nervous. So 3 years ago, pre-COVID, I was like, I only want to operate in employment insurance. It's guaranteed acceptance. Claim time, it's a breeze because we're not having to prove that there's any pre-existing conditions. It extends to their family as well. So if their family would like to join in on their employment offering, all of their pre-existing conditions are covered as well. So for me, I was like, this is a no-brainer. Everybody wins. The insurance company wins. We win in terms of finding a great outcome for the client, and the client wins as well. It can be truly life-saving for people here in New Zealand if they have suffered cancer in the past or are currently suffering cancer and don't have the availability for non-pharmac drugs here in New Zealand, which you obviously you may or may not be aware of. We've got a cap on what we can fund here in New Zealand, and an oncologist might say, hey, if you try this drug, it's not funded by the New Zealand government, but it might either save your life or lengthen your time on Earth, but it's $30,000 every round of chemotherapy. You know, that's what the power of group insurance is essentially, is that we can get people in, and it's a far more efficient way to do it. So 3 years ago, there was no market for it. It was really, really hard for me because employers saw it as, we've got a public health system, it's working perfectly fine. We would rather just pay our employees more than provide them with a staff benefit. And oh, how the market has changed since COVID. So, I mean, that has been, I would say, probably 70% of my business in the last 2 years has been employment benefits. And the reason being is because we've got this major issue with, obviously, immigration. We've got no migrant workers coming in. We've got no staff. We've got recruitment is like super hyper aggressive at the moment because people are going, we need to pay more, and there's no staff, and they're jumping from one company to the next, and we're not getting any international talent. We need to offer something really, really powerful for our employees, and insurance, because it's now health insurance in particular is now front of mind, because everybody knows how backlogged our public health system is. They've gone, give us private health insurance. And it's suddenly become a really, really popular offering, which is great because that's what I wanted. It's a win-win situation. It removes the pressure off the public health system. So those that can't afford or don't have the luxury of having that private health insurance benefit hopefully can be seen faster, and those that can will be seen in the public health system, and we can kind of make more of a equal ecosystem. I guess the balance is better. I think what the stats are is that only, was it 28%? Yeah, the stats for New Zealand for health insurance are really, really low for those that have private health cover. It's typically seen as quite privileged to have it because it is expensive. So now that we've taken that risk and put the onus, I guess, on the employer or business owner to provide that as a staff benefit, is pretty powerful. Yeah, it's exciting. It's an exciting place to be in at the moment, that's for sure.
Yeah. So Julia, Kiwi Bank New Zealander of the Year.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Well, that came about because I'll give you a bit more background into the story. So this was a few years ago. A family member of ours, a child, he was diagnosed with cancer, and unfortunately at 2.5 he passed away. He didn't survive. So the biggest need at that time for him was not so much money but blood donations, and I had never ever even considered my entire life being a blood donor or donating blood, or it just hadn't entered it wasn't part of my world. And when he got sick, the call for blood donations came out. They said the best thing that you can do right now for him and for others that are in this current situation is start donating not the blood, because he needs so much of it with all the surgeries that he's undertaking. And so that afternoon I went straight up into our donor centre and started giving blood. And when I was in that process, I thought to myself, firstly, how have I not been doing this my entire life, or been educated enough to know that this is something that we need to do as a community, because our blood doesn't just appear on the shelves. It has to be taken from someone. And also the feeling that I had after I had done something, after I had donated, was absolutely empowering in terms of, hey, I've done something really amazing for my community. I've potentially saved up to 3 lives just by sitting in a chair for 40 minutes, having a cup of tea and chatting with other people here. If other people could experience this feeling, perhaps that might set them on the path of continuing to do better things in their life, or feeling good about themselves that they were contributing to society. So to cut a story short, one of the insurers actually were promoting a campaign saying, hey, we want to see our insurance advisors and things coming into the community and doing projects. I thought, what a great idea. They were going to fund a project. And because I'd bootstrapped my whole entire career, I thought, great, if I can get funding from this insurer to boost education around donating blood, it doesn't cost anybody anything. It only costs your time. It's going to make you feel amazing. Give back to the community. Wow, wow, wow. Win, win, win for everyone. And I got shortlisted for the funding, but I didn't make the cut. And out of pure rage, because I was like, why? This is such a wonderful idea. Why would you not fund this project? I got so determined. It was probably a good thing. I think it actually was more successful because I wasn't given the funding, because it created that angry drive within me. Yeah, I went directly to the New Zealand Blood Service and I said, I want to help you guys. Let's make this massive. Let's make our city the donor capital of New Zealand, and really set the bar of like, we're doing this. Are the other cities going to try and beat us and keep up and things? And so what we did was we came up with a campaign where we got all the local business owners on board. We created video content explaining the importance of blood, because if I didn't know about it, surely hardly anybody else knew about it. And as a result of all those campaigns, that year in particular, we boosted the blood donors here in Hamilton by 300%. And that's where that award came about.
Appreciate that. Really appreciate
Yeah.
that. You're very selective about who you work with. I noticed that you work with just 3 life insurers and just 4 health insurers. Why?
Okay, I guess that's personal preference. So today, as I explained, I've been having some frustrations with a couple of insurers, and it all comes down to my personal value set of how we've built the business. So really key factors are partnering with the right people that align with your values, because I don't want to be offering a product or a service to a client if our values with that external agency doesn't align. And really important factors when you're considering partnering with an insurer or proposing an insurer for a client is the obvious ones, like price and the service and product. If they've got the 3 and that they fit those categories and they're going to work and be fit for purpose for the client, then great. But I add a few more things on top of that. So there's your price, your product, and your service. But there's also the values and how they position themselves in the community, which is really, really important for me. Being a private organization, I want to align myself with people that I know and have experienced that will create great client outcomes and are involved in their communities, because at the end of the day, it's not, for me, primarily about profit. Obviously, I have to make a sustainable business, but it's really important personally in my own values to create really positive impact for the communities and create a really positive generational cycle for the next group of humans that come through. So I guess partnerships with the right people is really, really key for me. And I will kick them to touch if I feel that if we don't have that synergy anymore, I'll walk away. And I've walked away from many lucrative deals as well, because my value set hasn't aligned with the company that I particularly might be working with.
You have a lot in common with Chetan. Chetan is based in Canada, and he's working on this very interesting project called Waikato. Would you like to throw a little light on what you're doing for multiple insurers, Chetan, for Julia's sake?
Yeah, so we've helped set up a brokerage, an agency, more like a broker general agency in the US, not in Canada. And the premise is we provide, well, we're a full-scale, full-service agency, but we also provide brokers across the states. In this case, it's 3 states for now, but it will expand slowly to all 50. Mobile app that enables them to cover every aspect of their business. So everything from CRM to lead generation to quotes to application submissions, case statuses, case management, everything is handled on the phone, on an app, or a tablet. So there's quite an appetite for that here. So there's quite a bit of excitement in the 3 states that we're launching. In fact, we launched recently last month in Jan. And the logic is the same, where we're not an aggregator. We don't care about selling everybody's life insurance and health. This is life and health, by the way. Life, health, and annuities. But rather we care about providing the best products that we think are the best products for from select carriers for term life, universal life, healthcare, short-term health, accident, supplemental accident, critical illness, disability insurance, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess that's where Edwin is saying there's some kind of overlap. Where I don't see that happening is the scale that we're looking at is so large that it's really hard to focus on community. and that's where I mean, how would you, the question is, knowing this, so we're rolling out with a few thousand brokers very soon in California, Texas, and Florida. Knowing that, and these are the biggest states in the country.
Oh yeah, massive.
And each of them, actually, each of them has a population larger than, or almost as much as Canada. So, given the size, community outreach and it seems difficult.
Yeah. I guess as well, like the answer to that is positioning yourself and connecting in with the right people within that. I know it's not even like a community, it's like another country, right? Like these states are other countries. So how do you create that? And I guess that we've started in Hamilton, and so we just kind of have worked our way out. So initially my business strategy was, I've got enough business to be reaching the level of comfort from a profit point of view just here in Hamilton, but now, and so I've started here and built the brand, and to be fair, it's only really gotten crazy over the last 2 years where I've stepped up in terms of brand visibility. So, and that is having a really clear business structure and understanding what your why is. So in business, I find like it's just crucial. You have to understand what your purpose and your why is in your business, so you can create that and have it visually presented within a community. I mean, it's like I said, it's a challenging environment for you because it is like a country. These states are so huge. So being able to present that, what you are about and your value set and your business, having it really clear and visibly within your brand and whatever your slogan is, making it very obvious, and then connecting in with the right people within the movers and shakers, I guess. New Zealand, we're really lucky because we are small, you kind of do find your people fairly easily. LinkedIn is a really great place to network. I've had many random meetings where people have just sent me a message and gone, hey, I'd really like to catch up with you and meet you. And then we've just identified that there's a great synergy between us. And from there, it's just created more and more impact. But I guess you really have to do something that will make you stand out, to kind of put your mark on where you are. And initially, our mark specifically to build us and our visibility was partnering with the Blood Service and doing something really cool there. And I think what appealed to people was because we were small. It was a small company with a very bizarre background. You know, I've started, my first job was a bike mechanic at age 10, to a ski instructor, to a police officer, no university degree, no qualifications except for all of my policing stuff, to then all of a sudden I'm in the insurance industry. So I think people really found that like, they found it very interesting and attractive. Yeah, so it's about partnering with the right organizations that suit your value set, and then maybe creating something to make you stand out within the community that people can get engaged in, to kind of get that visibility out there, and just being creative with what you're coming up with. Like we've got more blood campaigns coming up now, but we're actually moving into a different space. So Vahry is kind of the umbrella. We've got the insurance portion of the business. We've got the stuff that we do in the community, but next week we're actually working on our next project, which is we're doing bootstrapping a TV series, and the TV series is us fly fishing. So I do a lot of fly fishing here in New Zealand. I'm taking quite a number of high profile New Zealanders out fly fishing, where we're going to be talking about overcoming adversity, their journey, inspirational stories, overcoming hard things, and a really cool comedic aspect to it as well. So we're doing that to appeal to all audiences, not just like people that are into fly fishing or young people. It's going to appeal to everybody. And right now, I think the market and globally, people are in need to have stories being told to inspire them to help build resilience, because the last 2 years of COVID has just been hell. And we need some really cool stories to help inspire and light people's fire again, that we're going to get through it, and you can do some really cool stuff. So I think you guys need to be creative, not one size. Don't fall into the category of just insurance. You need to bring in other aspects to show that you're nimble and creative, and because people just hate insurance. There's no two doubts about it. You need to show that you're more than that.
When I said you and Chetan have a lot in common, we actually have plenty in common between us, AccelTree and Vahry. When you said you got into insurance without even knowing you were going to someday get there, I was reminded of an interview that Vivek gave to Insurance Business Mag, Asia edition. They said, you're an engineer, you're an IIT grad. What made you come into insurance? So he said, well, it was just a calling, it just had to happen. So we're as passionate about insurance as you are, and that's the commonality between you there and us here. Well, small is beautiful, small is quality. We'll let you go, but we're heading in your direction very soon, most probably, and I'll let you know when we land on your shores.
Ah, exciting. Yeah, I can't wait. And I'm excited for you guys as well.
We'll be in touch.
Okay,
Thanks
guys.
again.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Thanks a lot.
Good to come on. Thank you.
See you.